How do you think the war in Ukraine will end up? Sorry to begin with a question. I'll share my thoughts, of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here recording the video, making this question. Of course, I want to share my thoughts. But what we can see now is that you remember when the Russians started to talk in active defense. They have their own terms, their own propaganda. We have to be clear about that, and we have to be real, not to pretend. Let us not make the same mistakes as the West is doing by demonizing the other. I don't know, the Russians don't do that, of course, but they also do propaganda. So they are actively defending. It almost seems like this expression that he felt with his face towards my fist. It's like kind of the same idea, right? So they are defending, but while they're at it, defending, they might as well capture this or that town and keep advancing while defending. I think it's a good way. I mean, the best defense is the attack. I always heard this. I don't know, from many people. I don't recall a specific person now, but I was taught this at school. Best defense is the attack. It's to attack. And so Russians are on defending. They'll keep defending until, I don't know, Kiev or something falls. But how do you think it's going to end? Because at this moment it is clear that the Russians, the offensives, and okay, let's cut the jokes aside and Russian rhetoric aside, it's clear that they are on the offensive, right? And this offensive are actually producing results. Because how do I know this? It's not the Russians that tell me, it's the constant whining from the West. It's a constant whining from Zelensky. Give me billions, give me more, give me more. Of course, Zelensky, a voice that I cannot match. I think Mr. Alex Christoforou is the master on that one. But it's the constant whining about begging. If you don't give us more, we lose the war. And now, this building a narrative. That's what they do. It doesn't mean it corresponds as it matches reality, of course. They are losing indeed. And I mean, the loss was a bit foreseen from the beginning. It's just that when you evaluate a war day to day, daily, you analyze the front line daily, you forget the big picture, right? So when the Russians had to retreat from Kharkov or from Kherson, episodes like this, and then a lot of videos released by the Ukrainians of, for example, footage of drones killing Russian soldiers and things like this. If you are only confined to this sphere of information, you get the idea that the Ukrainians are actually winning, right? And you forget the big picture. It can happen the same on the side of the Russians, right? If you only confine to a sphere of information. So, but now the Russians, with their active offensive style, they are putting a huge stress on the Ukrainian means of defense. Being the most noticeable of the weaknesses on Ukraine defenses is the air defense. But that's not because it hasn't been supplied. Again, it's because the Russians have been targeting it for a while now. They actually destroyed it, most of it, by the way. And that's actually a very good strategy or tactic. If you have a problem there, you have to overcome that problem in order to undergo further operations. So the Russians identified that problem. They realized in the beginning that they did not master completely as they expected the airspace. So they had to, and it takes time. It's not from one day to another, right? But you can see the progress on the Russian forces. You can see, like I've mentioned this, I think, previous video. You can see the progress in every aspect: quantity, quality, adaptation to new tactics and new means of warfare. I heard this from a former Wagner and now a Russian soldier, former Wagner, in an interview, that he says that the whole doctrine is new. Yeah, they began the war with the doctrine, peacetime doctrine, right? So they had to make huge adaptations, and they learn, like in every war. Go study other wars that Russia has participated in. We will make an exception to the First World War, because those were very special and unique circumstances. But for example, if we the Napoleon invasion or the Second World War, where the Russians are defending themselves, and which you can, I know this is the part where the discussion comes up. They're not defending, they are invading. Well, Ukraine has been in the Russian Empire and then the Soviet Union for a long time. They actually feel, I'm pretty sure the soldiers there don't feel like they are in Far East Asia, Southeast Asia, in the jungle somehow, out of their environment, right? Fucking speak the same language. So I think they feel quite at home, and the people, the civilians, they get along with the Russian soldiers. So it's a different situation. It's not all black and white, right? It is true that they did go into Ukrainian territory. That is true, это правда, like Minister Lavrov said. But it is also true that a lot of reasons this could have been avoided if the West had paid attention to what Russia was claiming and begging and asking repeatedly throughout the years, and if the West hadn't had any active role such as it did in overthrowing the Ukrainian government. I'm not going to go over that now. Just go back and study your recent history. So, but now the front lines seem to be more fragile for the Ukrainians because the Russians are actually growing, and a lot of new things are. I don't know if you've seen this footage of this like turtle tank. I mean, who could have known the cycles of even of the military doctrine? Because the heavy tanks were like they had a short life, right? Because in the Second World War, at the beginning of the Second World War, some countries had heavy tanks, but they very soon realized that they were not suitable for most purposes of that war, right? That speed, movement, and firepower was more important than armor. They had the mobility was the emphasis, was what allowed you to achieve great results in a big offensive. So, but now the Russians bring back kind of a heavy tank. It's improvised, of course. It's not serial production, but you can see it's actually funny because this tank goes in a column through Ukrainian artillery fire. It does what it has to do. It turns back and it goes safely, and he's not destroyed. And it seems like, if you look at it, it seems like the design of a medieval battering ram. So yeah, adaptations. The Ukrainians are fighting, I'm afraid to say, a losing battle. The only fear, we also talked about this, it's if they get tempted by their masters, by the orders of their masters, if they are allowed to make desperate moves, like the attack on the reactor of the Zaporizhia power plant. Of course, they deny it, but what the hell? Who else is gonna do that? Right? Because if you have such disaster there, it's gonna be a lot of trouble in the whole of Europe. So, I don't know if you remember Chernobyl or Fukushima. I don't know if you're aware of those, but those are not pretty. It's like an atomic bomb being dropped there. Anyway, so how do you think this war is going to end? Do you think the Russians are going to push all the way to Kiev? I mean, they are advancing, but at the pace that they are doing it, it will take a long time. Unless they reach like critical mass and Ukraine reach the breaking point, and then it crumbles suddenly somehow. For me, it's still a mystery how this will unfold. I have little doubt about the who is going to be the winner of this war, the victor of the conflict. But then again, me and other analysts, even the best ones that I consider, like the guys at the Duran, they do not know all. There's always a big degree of uncertainty, because we all do the same, right? We go through the news, a lot of news, read a lot of opinions. Of course, some opinions are more valuable than others. Some news outlets are more valuable than others. And then they make their own conclusions, or they process that information through their lenses. They put the information through their own lenses. But for example, no one guessed, even with all the signs there, no one guessed what Prigozhin was about to do when he did it. No one guessed that. And so we never know what unforeseen events are yet to happen that can suddenly or dramatically change the situation. I'm not saying like they changed, like the Russians suddenly gonna lose or something, but I think most likely is that they can cause a lot of suffering, not change the course of the war, cause a lot of suffering, and cause more escalation. And yeah, I think the Ukrainians can reach a breaking point there, but the Russians will not go unscathed, unhurt. Yeah. And talking about minions of the United States, it's not just the Ukrainian government. You know, Argentina has this crazy guy there running, Milei. A lot of people put hopes on the guy. Same phenomenon as in this increase in vote of the right-wing populism in Portugal. Same phenomenon, same playbook. I mean, people here, the politicians here of this populist party, were even copying like word by word the speeches, of course translated, the speeches of Milei. I mean, they have some nerve. So this guy says now, because it's all one of the ingredients they use is they appeal to nationalism, right? So nationalists in Argentina want their Falklands back. You know, the island Falklands, which were decisively in the hands of the English after the Falkland War in the 80s. And I thought to myself, when I read the title of the news, it was like, what the hell is he talking about? This English territory? Is he gonna mess with England? And then it said, the first step to bring back the islands, the Falklands to us, has already been taken. And then it sparked my curiosity and said, aha, okay, they already done something in that way. Let me see I'm really curious about what it is. So the first step was an expansion of an American base in the Savage Islands. I just forgot the name of these islands, which are not yet the same islands, but you get the point, right? An American base. I mean, come on, man. How can you have the nerve to present this as something of in the way of what you promised? How can you do that? I mean, it's maybe in the future the English will leave, but the Americans will stay. I can understand that Milei, if it was according to his will completely, I think you would hand on a platter the whole Argentina to the US. The US would annex Argentina. I mean, he was claiming that he wanted to get rid of the currency and just use the dollar, so you might as well do that, right? These populist people, well, they are nothing but puppets from the factual power, so it's no wonder they do shit like this. I would never expect them to fulfill big promises that would actually improve the Argentinian people's lives. Okay, I think that's all for this last commute to home. So let me know what you think. How is the war gonna end? And one other thing. The Russians in their active offensive, defensive, they are advancing, but a new offensive is announced. So let me know what you think. Are they gonna try to surround Kharkov? Are they gonna keep piercing in the center, like Donetsk direction? Or are they gonna cross the river to the other side in Kherson region? Let me know what you think, please. And if you're too lazy to do it, that's okay too. Bye bye. See you on the next one.